Hi, welcome back to Faith and Conviction, and I'm your host, Ray Harris. I want to welcome you to this week's Torah portion, and we are working in the book of Numbers, and we are looking at Parashah, or portion 36, 3:6. This one has a Hebrew name that is very difficult for me to pronounce, and so I don't want to butcher it. But it means in English, when you set up, or in your making, go up. So forgive me for not trying to pronounce that Hebrew word, but it is important, and that's what gives us our meaning in English. Now, we are in the book of Numbers, but in Hebrew, the book is named Bamidbar, which means in the wilderness. Now, our key word comes from Numbers 8, verse 2, and it is the sixth word. And the Strong's number on that is H5927. H5927. Now that connects back to a word pronounced Allah, I think. If you to spell it phonetically, A-W-L-A-W. And what's interesting about that is it has several meanings which are important to us. Brown Driver Briggs identifies several definitions of this word as the following: to go up, to ascend, to climb. So all these mean to go from one location to another. To meet, to visit, to take oneself away, to cause to ascend, to be taken up into, to lift oneself. Now, this is kind of crazy, but this is actually kind of cool. We're going to need to make several connections between our Hebrew over to our Greek and down into our English so you can see what's going on. But this walk is worth it, and it's actually very, very cool, because when we see our connective points, you're going to be, hopefully the way I was when I first studied this out, like, whoa, this is actually very cool. So stay with me just for a little bit and see where this goes. Now, the eSword King James Concordance tells me that the Hebrew word is found a little over 800 times, and that is a tremendous amount. It's translated a whole bunch of different ways. It is translated as went, and variations of go, come, C-O-M-E, and like cometh. So it's very old King James. But as brought and bring, and variations of that word. Offer, offered, and variations of that word. Ascend, and variations of that word. Also to rise, climb, raised, and get, gat, exalted, lifteth. There's a whole bunch that goes on with this. Now, for our Torah portion, it is found in the portion in Numbers 9, verse 17, chapter 9, verse 21 and 22, chapter 10, verse 11, and it's translated as taken. Now, in our Torah portion, it's translated as lighted in Numbers 8:3, and lightest in Numbers 8:2. It's the only time it's translated as light, as far as I can tell. Numbers 8:3 is translated lighted, but also over in Exodus 40, verse 25, it's called lighted. And in Numbers 8:2, it's the only instance of lightest. Now, I mention this because this is actually the distinction that I have to bring out when we're studying this. As far as I know, these three instances are the only times that the King James uses the word light, as if you were to take a match and light it, or you were to take a fire and you were to build it and light it. So this word, though, when we go back to its meaning, the Hebrew word means when you set up, when you're putting something up, or when you build something, when you're setting it up. And we saw that through various different translations and definitions. So remember that, because this is very important. Numbers 8, verse 2, the King James says, "Speak unto Aaron and say unto him, when thou lightest." And that is translating the Hebrew word H5927. H5927. When you lightest the lamps, the 7 lamps shall give light over against the candlestick. So we're talking about the light that's in the tabernacle. The Complete Jewish Bible translates this verse this way: "Tell Aaron, when you set up." Now you see, that's the difference between when you light and when you set up. That's the difference between the meanings here, okay? When you set up the lamps, the 7 lamps are to cast their light forward in front of the menorah. Now, we'll know a little bit about the menorah. It's the Hebrew word for candlestick. We can do some word studies on it, but that's not the focus of our attention in this Torah portion. The Jewish Publication Society This one right here says, speak to Aaron and say to him, when you mount the lamps, let the 7 lamps give light at the front of the lampstand. Now, when you mount, it kind of sounds like when you, the way I think about it is like an old castle where you would put the lamp up onto the wall. When you mount it up onto the wall, that's the way I kind of think of it. But that's not what the lampstand is. The lampstand would probably stand on the ground and have a menorah come up, and it's 7 branches and these things. So, the Apostolic Bible Polyglot is very important when it translates this. And I'll speak it down into our part, but I'm not speaking the whole verse. La leison to aron kai eres pros auton hatan epithes. That is G2007 2007. That's the Greek word we're going to look at. Epithes tous Luke nous ek merus. So this is actually very important because these 2 words, there's 2 words in there we're going to find over in the New Testament. I pointed the other way, but we're going to look at the New Testament. So the Apostolic Bible Polyglot translates the Greek this way. Speak to Aaron and you shall say to him whenever you should place. When you should place. So that is of the Greek word G2007. That is epithes. So when you place, you shall place the lamps by rank. Now, that's very important. So we have to look at this Strong's number, G2007, and find it in the Greek New Testament. Now, it's epithemi. And Thayer says it means to put or to lay upon, to add to have put on, to bid to be laid on. So all these words mean different concepts of basically the same thing, to lay or to throw oneself upon. So epithemi is a compound word. It starts out with a preposition, and because it's part of a verb, that preposition actually works as an adverb. But anyway, tithemi is the Greek verb that we need to look at, and that is G5087. G5087, and it means to set, to put, to place, to lay down, to set on, to set forth, to make for oneself, to make for one's use, to set forth, to establish, to ordain. So there's a whole bunch of stuff. And remember, I'm going to have a web page for this stuff over at faithandconviction.org, so don't forget to go down there and see all these definitions and applications at the bottom of this video. Now, Esord says that this Greek verb is found in the New Testament about 50 different times. And it's translated several different ways in the King James. Laid, laid upon, layeth, and several different ways in which we can just do these things. And should put upon, putting, set up, set on, shall add, setteth. It's a bunch of different variations in the English to carry this idea that's found in the Hebrew and the Greek. So what is going on, and how do we see what's happening in Moses with the Greek in the Old Testament, to see the Greek of the New Testament, see the English and see what's going on? We have to kind of take a look in the New Testament, look for these words and see how they fit kind of the context and the motif. So Mark 4 verse 21 says this in the King James, and he, being Jesus, said unto them, watch this, this is kind of cool. Is a candle brought to be put under a bushel or under a bed, and not to be set on a candlestick? To be set. That is for the Greek verb G2007. That's what we were connecting in. We saw it over here in the New Testament. We found it over here in the Greek Old Testament, which translates this Hebrew word. That's how cool this is. So Jesus is talking about a light and a candle, and he's bringing all these things out. Now this is from Mark, but you can find the same concept over in Matthew chapter 5 verse 15. So I encourage you to go look at that. But what I want us to see is that be set translates epithethe. It's the same Greek word that's found over in Numbers 8 verse 2. So we looked at the Hebrew keyword. We saw the Greek translate that keyword. Then we're looking at this in the New Testament, and we're going, okay, this is so cool. So in Numbers 8 verse 2 said, when thou lightest. It doesn't reveal the idea of a setting up and doing these things. It doesn't reveal the idea of lighting the torch and then putting it on the wall. The King James just says, when you light. But Jesus is saying, is a candle brought to be put under a bushel and under a bed, and not to be set on a candlestick? Consider the profundity of what he's just now doing. He's taking the idea of Numbers, and bringing this over into the New Testament. Because when you look at this statement, the candlestick translates G3087. Luke, which is Luchnion, and Luchnion is from G3088, which is Luchnas, and that is found in Numbers 8, verse 2, in the Greek Old Testament. So we having this Greek word twice. We're talking about a light, as in the candle itself, and then a candlestick, which you put the candle on. Over here in Numbers 8, verse 2, and God is telling through Moses how to aim that light, and it's to go forward, and it goes out to where other people can see the light. And then Jesus comes in and he says, okay, now that you understand the temple and the tabernacle and you understand the settings of these things, let's take a candle. Now, do you take that candle, do you take that light and you put it under something so it's just hidden? Or do you take that candle and you put it up and set it up so it's seen by all, so the people who see that candle don't just really see the candle, they see the light from that candle. So here's the cool thing that's going on. The tabernacle presented God and his light going forward. Jesus is talking about that light being set up so all can see the light, not to see the light itself, but so that the light of God can be shown upon all men. Now that is cool, because we can see this. We take the Greek, which translates the Hebrew. The Greek Old Testament translates the Hebrew. We find those Greek words over here in the Greek New Testament. We see what's going on in the English. But because of this, we get to see what Moses is teaching. Then we get to see what Jesus is teaching. And we can see that Jesus and Moses are talking about the same thing. God illuminating all around. In the tabernacle, God's light went forward. Here with Jesus, the light is shown everywhere. This is powerful. This is very cool. It is very, very profound that Jesus is using the light of the menorah, which the Jews would be very well associated with, to talk about the purpose of God's illumination to the entire world, and that I am a light and you can be a light, and that through us, other people see the light of God illuminating their life and what they can do and how they can live for God. Again, so it's a power of Moses, power of Messiah. This is cool. I hope it's been a blessing to you this week. Until next time, continue to seek God, know Messiah, find hope.